Hey, so you've watched The Office, right?
Yes.
Do you remember when Kevin was trying to say, we have to come up with some kind of warning? And then Robert California comes walking in, and Kevin goes, warning, warning, right?
Yes.
Well, that's today. We're talking about warning signs before the end.
Before the end. Well, he's Chris, and I'm Jeff, and we're the Bible guys. Okay, Chris. So you're the movie guy. You're the resident movie expert.
I do like movies.
And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 3 of the main characters in a movie, and you have to tell me what the movie is. And you haven't seen any of these.
Nope.
So this is for...
Nope.
Okay.
We never do.
Here we go. Ready?
Yep.
Memphis Reigns, Otto Hallowell, and Sarah Sway Wayland.
Ooh. I got to confess, I don't want to spend too much time on it because we have to go.
So I would think Memphis Reigns is the one that would remind you.
I don't know.
Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, yeah. That was Nicolas Cage.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Memphis, I should have known. But you know what? I've only seen that movie once. And I'm not
really?
sure.
You only watched a Nick Cage movie once?
I'm not sure that the word Memphis stuck out of my mind.
Okay, here we
just
go.
Wasn't big enough.
Here's another good one. This is a good one.
Yep.
And I would know this one. Herman Boone, Bill Yost.
Remember the Titans.
Yeah, there you go.
Come on, Coach Yost. You're cooking my grits.
Tyler Durden, Marla Singer, Robert Paulson.
Fight Club.
Fight Club. There you go.
Yeah.
This is a good one.
Of course.
Ben Gates, Abigail Chase, Riley Poole.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, Ben Gates, I was going to say it could be any national treasure, one or two, but the girl was only in one.
In one, that's right. So it's National Treasure.
It's National Treasure Part 1.
There you go. Ethan Hunt, Jim Phelps, Luther Stickle.
Any Mission Impossible.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go, dude. You nailed it. So you were 4 for 5?
4 for 5.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Good job.
Well, I mean, Herman Boone, right? I mean, Tyler, Ben Gates.
Yeah, I would have gotten 4 or 5 too. Yeah.
4 to 5.
Yeah. Memphis Reigns, I would have thought, I know that movie. Back. I couldn't.
I still don't even remember. I don't think his character was big enough, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
It's just Memphis stands out, right? That's a...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, hey, good job, man.
Thanks, man.
Very impressive. So there are a number of warnings in the Bible. So if you're just now joining us, we are going through kind of on a devotional level, not on a seminary professor level discussion of the end times.
Yeah.
And which is what the Bible Guys is all about.
We should summarize this and say Revelation for dummies.
Yeah, well, or for somebody who's taking it in on a devotional
or
level.
Revelation by dummies.
Yeah, that's it. It's not. We don't want to go after our listeners entirely.
Right.
We do question their judgment, that the fact that they keep coming back and listening, but that's a different issue.
That's funny.
So, the Bible Guys, we're really built around the idea that we're just a couple guys who like to talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways, right? That's really what we're about. And so, hey, if you have differences of opinion, if you think some of the order is different, whatever, well, just join the club. There's almost as many opinions about the end times as there are Christians on the planet. But we're going to kind of give a summary, the high-level stuff. And there are warnings in the Bible that Jesus gives and Paul gives of what the world is going to be like before the end. And then there are warnings or indicators that it is the end. So the first one, the warning signs before the end are really like highway signs, right? God's kind of set up some clear signposts in our world to tell us that Jesus is about to come. And that's really what this is about. So these are signs pointing to the end. It's kind of like a knock in the engine, right?
Yeah.
When you're driving on the road and all of a sudden your engine starts making weird noises.
And you're like, I probably should get that checked because something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what this is. So we're going to go through a few of these. In the book of Mark, chapter 13, Jesus says, the disciples say, tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will show us that these things are about to be fulfilled? And Jesus replied, don't let anyone mislead you. For many will come in my name, claiming I'm the Messiah, and they'll deceive many, and you'll hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there'll be earthquakes in many parts of the world, as well as famines, but this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Yeah. So first of all, Jesus said, don't be misled. That's really the big point there.
Right. And by the way, I would venture to say that all of the things that he's mentioned happened in the first century.
Yeah.
And the second century, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, right? So wars and rumors of wars, kingdom going against kingdom, nation against nation, earthquakes, famines. This has been a part of every generation.
Yeah. The difference would be, and this could be a hint that he's making as well. The difference would be if you lived in South America 1,000 years ago and a war broke out in Southeast Asia, you wouldn't have ever heard about it.
Right.
If a famine was happening in Africa and you lived in Scandinavia, you wouldn't know about it.
Right.
Right? Earthquake happened somewhere, you wouldn't have known about it unless it happened close to you. So the difference is now that whole idea of wars and rumors of wars, knowledge that the world is just coming apart at the seams will continue to increase towards the end. And I think that that's one of the things that, it should kind of give us more confidence today, even than those readers, knowing, man alive, it just seems to be bigger. We know everything happening all the time. And, there's a lot of people screaming about the end of the world all the time because of, different calamities or things happening on the planet.
And think about the time, how much time has passed since Jesus gave this warning, don't be misled.
Yeah.
From that time until this time. So it's 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And then think about this. Remember the movie Back to the Future? They were excited for the very first television.
Oh, right.
They rolled out the TV.
Yeah.
And Marty says, we have two TVs. Don't be silly. Nobody has two TVs.
That's right.
Okay. And then think about when you and I were in college, the internet didn't exist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like just 30 years ago, no internet.
Right.
70 years ago, no TV. And believe it or not, this is probably the hardest to believe. But the first iPhone, do you know when it came out?
In the 2000s.
2007.
Yeah, wow.
Which means like we've only had the iPhone for not that long.
Yeah.
What's that been? 16 years?
Yeah, 15 years. Yeah.
So and you can't even imagine a world without such a device.
No, yeah.
A computer in your pocket. So it's definitely just our generation. All we've known is we're aware of all the wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah.
Right.
So I stay current on what's happening around the world as much as possible. I usually read a lot of headlines from multiple sources, not just one source. Know what's going on. But I've been amazed lately how quickly my daughter comes and tells me something that happens in the world before me. And I go, oh, really? What news source? And it's like TikTok. Right?
Right.
Something happens around the world, bam, it just flies through TikTok and all the 20-year-olds know about it.
Right.
Just immediately. And then I'm like, what? And I got to go look up headlines, to go figure out what's happening. So the pace of news and information is going faster. That's really one of the things. But Jesus really makes a big deal here. He said, really, here's the thing. Don't be misled. That's the warning I think that we need to take into this. When it comes to people who are claiming they know everything or that they have all the answers, it's easy to get drawn in by somebody who claims that they know the future, right?
Right.
And false teachers tell us all kinds of things, and they tell us that we can know things that other people don't know, and they're really, appealing to our pride.
And so one of the things that we talked about before the podcast was the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
So, even today, right now, it's not as popular as it used to be, but when you check out at Kroger or any supermarket, usually the National Enquirer is right there.
Right.
And they have the most ridiculous headlines.
Well,
and
I pulled some up.
Even though it's a lie, it still draws you in.
Yeah, it's a lie, but you're like, oh, I got to read that article. Right? So here's one. It says, alien Bible found. Turns out they worship Oprah.
Wow.
Man's 174-mile-per-hour sneeze blows wife's hair off. Saddam and Osama adopt shaved ape baby.
Oh, my goodness. And the pictures are excellent.
Yeah. Fat cat owns 23 old ladies.
Oh, jeez.
This one was so funny. Christmas miracle. Severed leg hops to the hospital.
Oh.
And then the other headline was Cannibal Chef gets his own TV cooking show.
Do you know that I actually remember seeing Severed Leg hops to the hospital? I remember seeing that. Yeah. That's hilarious.
The one I remember all the Bat Boy. Remember all the Bat Boy ones?
So, Bad Boys.
Yeah. So anyways, even though, so sometimes you're flipping through the channels and you see on TV somebody that's waxing eloquent and acting like they know every detail. Just don't be misled. It's kind of one of those things. It's hard to look away. Right. Just don't get sucked into it. So there are a number of signs preceding the end, right? He's literally saying it's just around the corner. He doesn't tell us exactly when, but just that it's getting close. It's kind of like when they dim the lights in a theater.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and you know it's coming. You know, the lights dim, and then I get all excited. You know, and I like the previews.
Yeah.
And you don't know how long the previews are going to be because on new releases, sometimes they can go 25 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But if their movie's been out a while, previews are like 7 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And so my wife joined me for we just went and saw The Flash, and she joined me, and she said, "Well, I'm late," and I sat down and I said, "It's okay. It's a brand new release." I said, "It's going to be 25 minutes for the previews."
Yeah.
So in other words, the point is, you don't know when the show's going to start,
But they're dimming the lights now.
but you know it's coming.
So here's a few things. Apostasy is one of the big ones. Increasing evil in the world, scoffers, many false prophets, right? Let's just read through a few of these passages. He says, for a time is coming when people will...
This is 2 Timothy 4.
Yes, 2 Timothy 4, chapter 4, verse 3. For a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They'll follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They'll reject the truth and chase after myths. But you should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you.
Yeah.
So isn't that something? Here he is again. He's telling you a little bit about the end times, but keep working. Keep telling people about Jesus, right? That's really amazing.
Yeah, and you know it's easy to recognize that, you know, people who say things that you want to hear, and they chase after myths. Naturally, people are going to be attracted to that because I think that you know it's the same reason why we'll go to a church that's just a feel good church.
Yeah,
you know, and we have to recognize, hey, wait a minute, this church doesn't preach enough of the truth.
Right.
Because I mean, I've actually been I've tuned in on TV and seen a lot of those.
Sure.
It's like, this is really good, but where's the hard truth?
Yeah, it is the nature of humanity to want to go find a religion that matches up with what they believe rather than choosing to believe what the Bible says, right? Yeah. So I want to find preachers who agree with me rather than me deciding I'm going to agree with what the Bible says. Right. And so he said that's going to become more and more. And quite honestly, that leads to apostasy. The other one is increasing evil. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, he says, you should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. For people will love only themselves and their money. They'll be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They'll slander others and have no self-control. They'll be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends. They'll be reckless. They'll be puffed up with pride and love pleasure rather than God. They'll act religious, but they'll reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that.
Yeah.
Right? So he says in the end times, it's going to get pretty crazy.
And you know what, by the way, I'm just going to say two things about this. Number one, every generation would say that about the next generation. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. But then also we have to consider that it always gets worse with every generation.
Every generation gets worse.
So even though that, 3 generations ago, they said that about, our grandfathers,
the hippies.
Yeah, the hippies.
Those hippies.
Right? Yeah, they would say that, they would say, well, Jesus is coming back because this is true.
Right.
We have to recognize the fact that, like, there is no other generation that fits this description in a worse way than
our current generation. Especially they will be cruel and hate what is good.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
That is...
That you just described our society right now.
That is our society straight up. Yeah. Right? Cruel and hate what is good.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Then 2 Peter tells us in the last times, scoffers are going to come. Scoffers are those that mock the teachings of God or the things of God. So Peter says in 2 Peter 3:3, most importantly, I want to remind you that in the last days, scoffers will come mocking the truth and following their own desires. Yeah. Right? Mocking the truths of God. Flaunting their sin publicly out in dude, again, that's a descriptor of our society today, right? Isaiah says they will call evil good and good evil. That's what Peter's talking about. Not only that, they'll live it out in front of you and throw it in your face all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and also in Matthew 24, another indicator is many false prophets.
Oh, yeah.
And Matthew 24:11 says, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people.
Yeah.
And, I just have to say this, but like on the news, I just saw, I guess in Jerusalem, they feel like they found the Messiah.
Yeah, there's a new one.
Yeah, there's a new one. Mm-hmm. And this one isn't just a new one like he's here and gone in 5 minutes. This is thousands upon thousands of people. And just like you said, TikTok, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I've seen him on TikTok.
Yeah.
and he is, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was just in Israel a couple weeks ago, and on the backs of a lot of road signs all throughout the country are these huge posters of a Messiah that died a couple years ago, and his people are waiting for him to resurrect, right? And so they're convinced that that's the Messiah, and they're trying to highlight the fact that this other guy that they found now is not the Messiah, right? So they've got posters all over the country. So there's kind of an argument in Israel over who actually is the current Messiah, the one who just died who's going to resurrect, or the one who's teaching now who needs to die and resurrect.
Wow,
right?
Sounds like the beast and the second beast.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing what's happening. But this happens all the time. It doesn't have to only be in Judaism, though. There's people all over the place who say, "Hey, we found this guru. We found this great teacher. We found this guy who can teach us how to tap into our spirit guides or whatever, and have these spiritual engagements and all these kinds of things." And so it doesn't have to only be a Jewish Messiah. This is the person who has all the answers, is what he's really talking about there. So it makes sense to me as you look at these things that the lines would be drawn at the end, right? Either for God or against God. And there aren't going to be any fence sitters, when Jesus returns. The world's going to be divided into two different groups. Either you're for Jesus or against Jesus. And right now, there's not a lot of people who go, I'm kind of neutral with regard to Christianity. People love Jesus or hate Jesus. That's really how it works around the world. So those are kind of some of the warning signs. You're hearing the noise in the engine. Something bad's about to happen. Now, there are other signs that accompany the end times, right? This is the end is near. The end is here.
This is after the engine falls out.
It literally falls out. It's smoking all over, and you're pulled over on the side of the road.
And then you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. By this time, everybody's going to know for sure that the end is here. And it's stuff like this. He says in Luke chapter 21, there will be great worldwide distress. He says, and there will be strange signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And here on earth, the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and the strange tides, and people will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth, for the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So when all these things begin to happen, stand and look up, for your salvation is near.
Well, there's no doubt about something will be happening if something happens with the sun, the moon, and the stars.
Right.
So when stars start falling out of the sky and the sun starts scorching people because it's so hot and killing them, that's probably a good sign that something supernatural.
Roaring seas, strange tides, all those kinds of things. It's pretty crazy stuff.
Well, because it says that the sun is going to go. I mean, we haven't read that yet, but the sun is going to go dark, and then the moon will stop reflecting the sun.
It's crazy.
And of course, we know that the moon is connected to tides, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably what that's referring to.
And it literally says, "For the powers in the heavens will be shaken." And then he says, everyone is going to see the Son of Man come then. That's when you're going to see. So, hey, if you want to know if is it going to happen, well, these sun, moon, and stars stuff, tides, all those things. So here's what happens, by the way. I just want to point this out. Old Christians will argue when they read about these kind of prophetic things, and they'll use all these complex words, post-tribulation, mid-tribulation, pre-tribulation kind of arguments. But new Christians just look up, right? And that's what he says. When you see these things happen, look up. So a newer Christian, somebody who has maybe a simpler view of these things, which I think is a good place to be on this, when you read it and you start to see these things, you just look up, hey, Jesus is coming. Oh, good, Jesus is coming. Right. And then the longer you go, if you're not careful, you get sucked into the arguments about these things. So, dude, I don't know the specifics about every one of the things, but I can tell you when the stars start falling and the tides start rising, look up. Jesus is coming back, right? That's really the best way, I think, to take that. So he wants us to see both something terrible and something wonderfully real, and that's that this world won't last, right? So we tend to put our hope and our trust in what we can accomplish and have on this world. And one of the things as you study the end times, you just come to the understanding that this world's not going to last. And it's terrifying on one side, but on the other side, knowing what he offers next is incredible. And so it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind that all of this is written by the Apostle John, which, by the way, we forgot to mention.
Yeah.
So John is banished to an island. It's an island,
the Book of Revelation,
called Patmos, right?
Yep.
And so he's writing a vision, and this is a vision that was God given, and so he's the one who that we're talking about, the apostle who's He may be the last one left alive.
He was the oldest. He was 110, I think.
110. This was written about 95 AD, and so quite a few years after. And God gave him the privilege of seeing the future in some pretty radical ways.
Yeah. So when the world begins to go into chaos, when people begin to believe they're about to lose everything that they've been trying to build, and it becomes clearer and clearer that this world isn't going to last, those people who've placed all their hope in this world and their heart is set on the things that they can accomplish and achieve and acquire in this world, when they begin to lose those things, they're going to become more and more and more angry with God, right? So this is why Paul and Peter and even Jesus tells us, don't lay up treasure here on earth, lay it up in heaven. This isn't going to last, right? It's going to rust out. The moths are going to eat it. Paul tells us we're just travelers living in temporary tents. The writer of Hebrews talks about how we are temporary citizens on this planet, but we are permanent citizens in heaven, always telling us to look towards eternity because this isn't going to last. But the people who only have this are going to get more and more angry towards God. And so you're going to see this stronger and stronger hatred against God and God's people during this time.
Yeah, and in the book of Revelation also says that, when these things happen, and they're so incredible, like a star is going to fall and poison the waters, and we haven't mentioned that yet, but like all these strange things are happening. It says that some will see it as a sign and turn to God, and then there will actually be some who would do the opposite.
Yeah.
In that moment, when confronted with all of this, they're going to think that the fanatic Christians are trying to connect the dots and somehow this is related to the Bible.
Yeah.
When actually what they'll do is they'll pass it off as like, sort of like Bruce Willis in The Comet, right?
Oh, right.
Which was what, Armageddon?
Armageddon.
Yeah. Like they're like, oh, it's just an evolution thing. A comet hit the Earth, and all all these things are happening.
Sure.
And we all knew that global warming and the sun and the moon and the sun is going to burn out and all these different kind of things. And so they're going to pass it off as having nothing to do with God. And it's just hard to believe, but at the same time, I guess it's not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, God told us these things, but either you believe him or you don't.
Right.
I have a recent acquaintance that was talking. We were talking about the podcast, and he just said it wouldn't matter to me whether it was true or not. I still wouldn't believe it or obey it.
Wow.
Right. That's a pretty strong statement to me.
Yeah, that's a very strong statement.
And all I can say is the Bible said that it'd be both sides. Right. God's really, really clear what's going to happen, and either you're going to choose to believe and obey, or you're going to choose to reject and not obey. That's it. So, God doesn't tell us these things to scare us. Again, what is Jesus' solution? Jesus says, stand and look up, for your salvation is near.
That's right.
So this isn't to scare us. It's to say, Jesus is coming.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great place to end. And hopefully we'll see you next time on The Bible Guys.